Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast, bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday, live from East London. Today we're joined by Alex Banks, who'll be breaking down his live setup and giving you plenty of tips along the way. So we're super excited to be joined by Alex Banks, whose live setup combines Ableton Live and Push with a mix of hardware controllers and effects units. We thought it'd be a great chance to get an insight into the power of Ableton, as well as seeing how Alex's live show works. And remember, we are live and interactive, so leave your questions in the comments and we'll get to them right at the end. So welcome, Alex.
Hi, how you doing? I'm very well, thank you.
Good,
Yourself?
good. Feeling good, it's Friday, the sun's shining.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
So tell us about this setup, because it looks amazing.
Okay, cool. So this is my live setup. I've tried a few different ways of performing live, and after a bit of experimentation, this is what I've ended up with for the moment. And did a recent tour with Moderat, supporting them in Eastern Europe. Got to try it out, and it's working pretty well for me. So basically, we've got Ableton Push, as you've already mentioned. That's the hub of everything, obviously coming off the laptop there, and using Ableton Push as a controller, controlling live. Got all my clips here. Basically, the clips are different parts of the track from the album, which I've recently finished. Using Ableton Push to basically trigger the clips and work my way through the tracks and sort of remix them on the fly, trying out different arrangements, and basically giving me control over different aspects of the performance and the musical arrangement sort of on the fly.
So it's really just triggering clips.
On a basic level, it's the Push has got quite a few different modes you can go into, which I use at different parts of the performance, which I'll come back to a little bit later. For different tracks, certain techniques suit different sounds or different parts of the song. And feeding into that, I've got the Allen & Heath K2s, which I'm using as basically overall kind of level controllers and effects triggers. So basically all of these tracks I've got in Ableton are all going into groups, and again I can come into more detail in a bit, but these groups basically, as you can see, I've got my drums, bass, vocals, lead, pads, arps, ambiguously named other, and then a channel for machine, and then these various knobs for different effects and different things that I can trigger on the fly to add some spontaneity to the performance and kind of have a bit of fun with it. We've got the Native Instruments Machine Micro here, which I'm using kind of for one-shot samples, and you can basically use this as like another, almost like a secondary kind of Ableton Push in a sense, in that if I go to pattern mode, I've got various scenes that I can trigger for rhythmic dependent stuff. Going to pad mode, I've got various one-shot samples I can hit. Going into Allen & Heath DB4, I've got 4 channels here. It's divided so that my drums and bass are going into that one, vocals and leads into that one, and so forth. I've got heaps more effects on there. And all of that, again, being fed into the Korg Chaos Pad Quad, which is kind of the final stage of basically other things that I can play around with.
Down here, by the way.
Can't really see that, but just kind of more spontaneous effects and different sound manipulations. So as I say, I'm going into more detail in a bit, but that's a basic overview of all the things I've got to play with.
Yeah, I mean, and how did you try out a lot of controllers before you settled on these ones? Was it a case of being able to take them on planes and then being portable as well as doing what you need?
I mean, being able to take it on planes is obviously a massive part of it. In my studio, I've got all sorts of toys that I want to play with. I've got a Moog Voyager, which I've used on pretty much every track on the album, which is one of my favourite bits of studio kit. And I think for some of the UK shows, I'm going to be using that live, and I'd really love to take it abroad to Europe and around the rest of the world. And I've even got a flight case for it, but actually the logistics of taking something that big on tour with you when you've got all of this stuff as well, it might be better to leave it at home for the moment. But
you wouldn't think of using a VST version or similar?
Well, I've got basically, to get around it, I've resampled it into Ableton, and it does sound pretty similar. And there's plenty of other stuff I can do live that doesn't involve having the Moog. But you know, I do love my analog gear, and I love having the instrument with me. And there's certain parts that I've used it to make different parts of different tracks, and you know, there's just something interactive about maybe the ways that I'm using the mod wheel with the filter, the way it's sort of feeding back into itself, that no matter how well you try and resample it, you know, you can't get that kind of analog randomness which makes it so special. But I mean, that aside, you know, it's that's only one small part of it. Everything else, you know, it's fairly portable. It actually condenses down. You know, I can stack these up, put loads of padding around them, and get them into a fairly small case. All of the leads and cables and stuff, you know, that's not breakable, so you can chuck that into the hold, and it's, you know, you haven't got to worry about it getting smashed up. But in terms of controllers I've tried out, I mean, I guess, the last 2 years I've been working on much more based in the studio, making the album, and not been thinking about the live setup too much. And then once you've finished the album, then you've got to think, right, how can I translate this onto a stage and best represent it in a performance situation? And around the time that I was looking to do that, I actually hooked up with my friend Adrian from Ableton, who's based down in Brighton. And it's actually the first gig that I'd done for ages, just as a little tester in a little venue in Brighton. And Adrian told me about the Ableton Push that was coming out. And in terms of the way I like to work, it actually really fitted. I mean, different people work in different ways. They're looking for different things from controllers. But I find it really important to know what it is that I'm going to trigger in a set. So for example, along here we've got like labels telling me what each of the different, each of these different rows is. You've got different colours, so I can assign different colours to different things on the screen. And it might seem like a really simple thing, but for me, it just means that I know that those are my drums. I've coloured them differently. I know where everything is, and it just really fits into my way of thinking.
Right. So maybe we could hear a little example of what you
Sure,
mean.
sure. Okay, so this is a track called Phosphorus. Let's go into excuse me.
Nice. So how much of that is spontaneous, or is it all spontaneous, just a case of looping and then just kind of going around and triggering stuff?
I mean, it's a mix of the two. You know, it depends on the venue you're going to be playing in, the sort of gig that you're going to be doing, and you know, kind of what the crowd's like. So I've set things up so that I can basically work my way through the structure of the track, pretty close to how it is on the album. You know, when I was making the tracks, I spent a lot of time working out how I wanted them to go. So obviously it seemed natural to be able to, you know, I've got the different scenes here. It's like, you know, we called them things like, you know, drop one, breakdown, build, you know, epic drop, like give them different titles to go to different parts of the track. So I know that that could work. And, you know, those things, you've got to be able to set up a certain amount of, you know, you can't have everything being completely flexible because you've only got so many hands. There's only so many things you can do at one time. So I found through experience that almost giving yourself too much to do can be quite limiting, because you end up not being able to do half of it. Because in the heat at the moment, when you're on stage, you're in front of loads of people, it's dark, it's really loud. Like, you can't possibly do all of those things. So by limiting a few factors, you actually have a lot more creative control and knowing what your equipment is. So things like looping effects, I used like the Sugar Bytes Tornado looper quite a lot on the album, just for like little bits of sort of playing around effects. So rather than sort of taking a stem of the vocal that's got all of those effects on it, obviously I lead them off, assign that to a controller, and then you can have like I can just like catch that bit on a loop, kind of mess around. Obviously got a filter on there. If I then want to add some more effects on here, like some delays and stuff like that, or reverbs. So if I didn't do that stuff, it would just play back as is, but it gives you a little bit of control to kind of play around with it and sort of mess around.
So would the K2s be the main hub of the whole performance along with push?
I guess, yeah, from a control aspect, and it kind of works out quite nicely that we've got the rows on here correspond with the rows I've got on here, and I think it's a really important thing, as I say, when you're playing live, to be able to access your controls and access things in a really logical way. So like most of these are loopers, like most of these are filters. In fact, all of these are filters. I can switch the filters into different modes. That puts it into low pass or high pass. Reverbs and delays on here. And then the different switches you can assign to different things. But there's a kind of standardization to it, so that I know that when I'm like, I want to add some reverb to the vocal, I haven't got to think, which knob did I put it on? Or I want to loop something, which knob was that on? Like, it's always that one, it's always that one. And then once you've done the set a few times, it becomes like your instrument, and just like you just go to it and it's intuitive. And same in the studio, you need to know where things are for them to be able to play around with it, because you don't have time to mess around when you're on there. You're like, right, I want to do that. You need to be able to go straight to it. So yeah, the K2s are kind of the hub of control things. The push is sort of the hub of triggering things and working my way through the musical elements and the structure.
Cool. So maybe we could take a look at what the KTs are actually controlling in Ableton.
Sure.
Just so we can see what you've chosen plugin-wise.
Let's see. So just to summarise on here, sort of before we go on to that, if you get the screen up, like we've got basically all of these things are different tracks, like different tunes off the album, and I've laid them into kind of put them into little kind of patches so that they pretty much correspond with what's going on the push. So you can see here the square goes around it. That's what I can see on the push. And I did try playing around with having them in a big row, all in rows, kind of going down the page, and actually found that it limited the creative possibilities to some degree, because maybe I'll trigger the drums here and then I want to trigger some drums down here. They obviously cancel each other out. So laying it across like this gives me a lot more flexibility, but to have, there's like 100 channels in Ableton to make my hour-long set, and to have control over those would be, nearly impossible, because you'd be cycling through and it would just get too busy. So again, to try and simplify things, I've got all of these being fed into these 8 channels here, which correspond with the K2s, and it also saves on processing power. Because say for the drums here, we've got plugins down here which are assigned to that channel. Rather than having to have 50 different loopers or tornadoes or whatever plugins, I've just got one, and if I want to, I can use clip automations, change the presets on it for different tracks, something I can come back to in a minute. So that's that plugin there, and quite simply, that's just turning that on and off, and that's controlling a preset that I use quite a lot, as I say, during the creation of the album, and I've just got really a good feel for kind of what that's doing rhythmically. So maybe just try and catch a kick drum or something like that. And then down here, we're just using, get rid of that. So that's just going to a reverb. If I've turned that on, that's, now that's just on and off on the delay. And it might seem strange that I haven't got that send on a knob, but what I was actually finding is that, particularly in a live situation when you're playing through a massive PA and you're monitoring through wedges, if you add too much delay, you can sometimes find that you're washing out the mix, and in order to free up another knob, I was just thinking, well, actually, I kind of just want it on and off for the most part. And then if I want to completely wash it out and I want to do something, like create some really dubby effects or something, I've got more delays on the DB4 and more reverbs on here. So, as I say, I've got more control over that. This knob here, we've got the filters. You can see that there's 2 filters that's controlling, and this switch here basically turns off the low pass, turns on the high pass, and back again. And that's giving me the visual feedback on that channel as well, so that I know which mode I'm in, which is kind of cool. And then these down here, at the moment, I don't have them assigned to an awful lot. I think a couple of them maybe like change effects into different modes. And these bottom ones here are actually really important. Come back to what I was saying about how I've structured the set and got everything laid out across the page. Some problems that I was coming across was, let's see, stop those clips. Like maybe I've got a bit of drums. Maybe I've got this drum loop coming on here, and maybe I want to bring in a bit of percussion here. Now, the thing I was finding is like I'd be maybe, I started working to the next track and I've still got a bit of percussion left over from the last one, and I'm just kind of like, oh no, I didn't want that there or something. So what I can actually do if I do that, that kills any drum channels going on. Let's see, so you can just about see that those 2 lights light up there at the bottom of the channel, showing that that's stopping all clips on that channel. So I've kind of learned that, before I bring in a bit of vocal for the next track, like if I want to kill something that's, maybe I'll turn the filter down, it's not even in the track, rather than getting any nasty surprises, triggering something else, opening up the filter and realizing that there's some bit of audio from way back in the set going on, like that's just a kind of last resort kill switch that just like shuts it all up. And
panic button.
Yeah, kind of. And again, just giving you control over things, so that, as I say, with a bit of experience and practice, you run into these situations where you're playing in front of people, like, oh no, I really didn't want that going on. So you set these little things up, everyone's got different ways of working, but just from my little experience, that's really handy to have. So at the bottom, again, you know where everything is for each channel. It's like, right, kill that, bring in the next one. And further to that, it's also worth mentioning, kind of along a similar theme, that for each track that I'm starting to play, we've got a scene here which I've just called in load, and you can just see there that basically it's got stop buttons going right the way across the set, except for the track that it's relevant to. So this is for a track called Hush, and what that does, it's also got the tempo written in the title, so that's written as 125 BPM. So say I've been messing around with some of the sounds from the previous track, I've started to bring in the next track, maybe I'm mixing them up, maybe I'm experimenting with some sounds, and then I'm like, right, okay, I really want to start the new tune now, almost like a master panic button, like, I want everything else to shut up, I want it to be the right tempo. Click that, and because there's no other stop buttons going on for the track it's relevant to, it means that anything new that I've got, and let's bring in a bit of audio here and play around it. So like we've got a bit of a track playing. Now say for example, I was still at the tempo of the last track, and maybe I still had some like bits of audio playing or whatever. What have we got going on here? Let's try and bring something in. I mean, they're obviously in the wrong key, but so say I mix them up and I'm just like, oh right, I really want to get rid of all of that. Basically, I can hit that, it makes sure the tempo is right. It also has lots of clip automation data, which I've got over here, and any presets that I've got for the Moog. Basically, everything is laid out on that load channel, so that I know that when I hit that, everything I need for that track Hush is all kind of loaded into place. So
not just the clips themselves, but the presets and the actual parameter settings?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And
maybe you could show quickly how you would do that, sending parameter settings and presets?
Yep, sure. So let's see. Resolution's a bit small in here.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can see it. So where are we? Okay, so there's a good example. Like this is just like a kind of lead break of one of the tracks. Now something that I was finding something I was finding, like say, like I'm playing around with the K2s, I'm putting the filters all over the place, I'm putting the effects in different places. Again, sometimes you might go to a drop and you've left the drum filter closed from maybe 16 bars before, and it's big drop and like your filter's down, so, which obviously you don't want to happen. So using the fact that these using the fact I've got everything assigned to these groups, there's no audio actually, there's no clips being triggered on these groups as such. As I say, all the audio is being fed into them, but I can still use the clip automation to send out data to the plugins on it. So in here, for example, all I've got is, like double click it, let's see, how do we get this up? Okay, so look at the envelope, and I mean, it's kind of hard to see it because it's basically just on and off, but in there is a bit of data that I've programmed. It's just a little bit of controller information, which is sending out to the filter to say, right, you really need to be, in this case, it needs to be about halfway down because it's so it just means that things are where they need to be. Here we've got one called all off, which means on the leads, because that's the lead break, obviously that bit of synth is going to come in. I want to make sure that the filter's open and that it's doing what it needs to do. And so I've got loads of data in there, which is basically saying like, open the filter, turn off the reverbs, turn off the delays, turn off the looper, so that when I go to it, it's kind of a nice clean slate and I can start playing around with it and working into it again. And as you can see, like scroll down the whole set, there's all of these like off, all off, filter, whatever, just different things that I program so that things are where they need to be. And then again, the same with the Moog. I don't have that here today, but that'll mean that when I trigger that scene, it's making sure that when I go to play the Moog, the preset on it is the right one. And also we've got, let me just see if I can find them. Here we've got some drum racks. Let's see, which are just kind of one hit samples. So there's the vocal for a track called Phosphorus, which is just as I'm going to play. Maybe not. It's because I haven't triggered that scene. But basically, it means that if I go to that track and trigger it, it's I'm not going to hit these pads and suddenly get loads of MIDI coming back from a track that isn't relevant, because obviously I don't want to be spending time like playing around with different presets. It's just going to turn off, again using the clip automation data. We've got things like off here, and it's just turning off the drum racks that are on that channel and making sure that the only drum rack turned on is the one I want for that particular moment of the track, so that when I go to hit it, the bits of vocal or the bits of drum hits or whatever are playing back. So, I mean, that stuff, I've got to be honest, it's really boring to sort out. Like, it takes a lot of time in the studio.
It's such a big difference.
It does, though, it does.
Yeah.
You might spend a whole evening just sat there with your cup of tea, just, like, looking at the screen, kind of programming it all. But
and sometimes it's trial and error too, where you program it, then you test it, and you realise, actually, I need that to be something else. And
I mean, I spent hours, like, working my set, so it was all going down the screen, and then when I actually started to play with it, within 10 minutes, I was just like, oh no, that's not what I at all. Like, ended up doing it completely differently. But
yeah, I mean, we had a Friday forum. If anybody does want to know more about clip animation, sending automation around with presets and stuff, there's a Friday forum a couple of weeks ago where Freddy Frogs explained that in more detail. Maybe we could go into like kind of performance now, where you can like show how it all works and
cool.
Jam it out for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just gonna stand up and leave you to do your thing.
Oh, okay.
I'll just back out of the way. And if you do have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the comments and we'll get to them after this.
Okay.
Awesome. Nice one, man.
Cheers.
A lot of shots of your crotch there. I hope you don't mind.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, we'll just quickly get into your questions as we're running out of time. But let's have a look and see what anyone says. So Auntie Hevosma, apologies for that pronunciation, says, what kind of effect racks do you use in Ableton? Do you build them yourself? If yes, could you show what kind of racks you've built?
Okay.
And do you use racks at all? Or?
I haven't really got that deep into the racks. Generally, I'm just sort of finding that. I mean, I say I've got the effects on DB4, which are really good on the mixer, and they're fairly basic things. I guess. Hang on, let's see. I found that on the Moog inputs. As I say again, I'm not using the Moog here today. Let me just see if I can find it. Apologies again, because the resolution is quite small. It's kind of hard to find where things are. No, I can't easily find that. It's kind of hidden somewhere because I haven't been using it. Basically, I'm using a lot of the sounds that we've got on here, they've already been kind of processed quite heavily like in the studio side of things. So like all the compression, all the kind of distortions, sort of drives and stuff like that, they've all kind of, they're all sounding pretty much how they want to. With the Moog, because it's, hang on, it's got a bit of audio right
Yeah,
it's a little loop. With the Moog, because obviously the sound is coming out of it unprocessed, I've used quite a few effects chains on here, but again, it's just things like distortion,
Sure.
And obviously filters and kind of specific kinds of reverbs, and again using that clip automation to change between different chains. I'm sorry I can't actually find it at the moment easily because we've got a tiny little screen, but to be honest, there's nothing really that complicated going on. I know there's people that have got really deep into that side of things, and I know there's loads of really cool Max for Live plugins, but as I say, in terms of chains, like I haven't really got that deep into it. And again, saving on processing power, there's only so much that I need to do, and only so much you can play with at one time. So
I mean, what would you consider the biggest challenge in all of this? I mean, is it just a case of trial and error when it comes to setting up your live set? There isn't really, because everyone needs different things, everyone relies on different things.
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
people want to use more MIDI, some people use more audio.
Yeah.
You know, is it just a case of set it up, see how it works, and refine it as you go?
I think, I mean, because it can take quite a long time to grow this set. You know, something like this, it starts off quite basic, but then eventually, once you've done all the things you need to do to it, you end up with this like massive project that's got hundreds of channels in it. So obviously, before you embark on making 100 channels and like chopping up your entire album from stems and like program all these bits, you've got to have an idea as to what it is you're trying to achieve from it. So for me, I think it's really important to get that balance right between trying to recreate what you've got in the studio and make it sound as good as it does in the studio. So I'm using mastered stems here that have come like as well as sending the mix to be mastered. I've got the stems mastered, so I'm feeding them back in, and I know that if I set all the faders to 0, set everything at 0, it should play back exactly as it was mastered, with a bit of limiting actually on the output, so that I know that I'm not sacrificing any audio quality. But then you don't just want to stand there and press play and do nothing. You've got to give yourself things to play around with. So I mean, there's millions of plugins out there, so many different effects. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but as I say, I think having some degree of simplicity about it, and not loading yourself up with too much, but just having things accessible, so that things are where you want them to be at the time, and really personalise it to you, and find bits of equipment that you're comfortable with. I mean, I used the Machine Micro quite a lot in the studio when I was making the album, so it's nice having that here with me. I've become really familiar with the push and different ways of that's working. So again, it feels comfortable, and you don't want to overload yourself with so much stuff that when you actually go to perform, you don't know where any of it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
that said, that little demo that I just did there, actually the set is designed to run sequentially. So maybe not everything is is sort of where it should be at the moment. But I know that when I work my way through it, as I say, from trial and error, I program things such that it's like, right, I know I'm going to go from there. I know when I want to go there, that I definitely don't want that filter to be closed. So, you know, little things like that you pick up along the way. And the nice thing about Ableton is, like, because it is so flexible, once you've learned the basics, and you can, you know, there's obviously hundreds of YouTube tutorials and all sorts of information up online. So you just think, right, I want it to do that. Can it do it? And you know, like the clip automation thing is a really good example, which apparently is new to Nine, which I didn't know until just on the train journey here. But without that, I'd have really struggled with this whole kind of, you know, like the filters not being in the right place or the presets being loaded and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really flexible, and you know, it's very customizable to make it how you want it to be.
Cool. So I'll just jump in some more questions. This kind of combines two questions, which I know someone else asked earlier about the mixer. It's the Alan Heath Zone DB4, right? Yeah.
It is, yes.
Why did you, Johnny Watt says, why did you choose your mixer over the other ones? What are its capabilities? I mean, we won't go too far into the actual mixer's manual, but
okay,
you know, why did you choose it, basically?
Well, to begin with, I mean, I've only recently started using the mixer as a kind of creative tool, because, as I say, in the studio, when you're making the tracks, I've been practicing the sets. You know, the mixer wasn't that important, but I mean, some people have said to me, why do I have a mixer at all? Because, you know, everything's kind of being mixed internally anyway, and if you just take the output, like, you know, it should sound pretty good. But I really like the idea of having some kind of hardware control before it basically goes out over a massive PA and you don't have any more control over it. So, you know, maybe you're working on something and it's like, oh, actually I could do with a bit more bottom end, then these EQs are really nice, or for cuts in particular, because I guess it's designed as a DJing tool primarily. You know, you've got different modes of the EQs here, put it into ISO mode, and it can like chop out the bottom end and the kick really nicely without actually like taking out all the kind of warmth or making it sound too thin. The filters on it are really nice. Like the Zone filters are quite legendary, and they're really good. So I mean, I've got the filters internally as well, but you know, if I want to add a filter there, they're really good. And the effects on it are absolutely fantastic. Like the reverbs and delays are really good quality, and there's loads of other effects that you can play with. Again, realistically, when you're in a set, you're not going to be like, oh, select there, let's have a look at, you know, let's trawl through the menu. You don't have time to do that, but it's very customizable so that you can play around with the effects. You've got this expression knob so that if you're on a reverb or delay or something, you can you know, chop out the bottom end of it, or that's your feedback or whatever. So again, it's quite instant. It's about having things to hand, and also it's a 8-in, 8-out sound card, so that if I show up at a gig and I've got the DB4 with me, I just plug the USB in, and there's no extra cables to plug in. It's just ready to go. And also, because I'm using the K2s, it's got this X-Link thing, which means that these are just, they're kind of like Ethernet cables coming out the back of it. And again, it's just, you know, real convenience. Like plug it in and it's good to go.
Yeah. One more question, because we are short on time. I can't even begin to pronounce this. Mircea Bogdan Stanciu. Yeah, sorry about that. Are you happy with your current live performance, or are you thinking about spicing it up some more? I guess the question is, if you could add one more thing, what would it be? Is there something on your shopping list?
Actually, I did order something which I was hoping would be here. Just come out, so not arrived yet. But it's like a decent pad.
Okay.
It's like really cheap. It's only like 50, 60 quid for just a little full pad, drum pad thing. And drums is one of the instruments I've always played since I was a kid. I get to drum a lot now, but you know, there'll be bits in a track where you just want something else to play with, and I'm you know, feeling kind of rhythmical, and so just pick up some sticks, have a little play with it. So that'd be fun to play with. But I mean, I'm always looking to expand the set. You know, I've got, as I say, all these switches here. They're not really assigned to anything at the moment, and I know there's a lot more scope to play around with different Max for Live plugins and find different ways to kind of manipulate the sound. And also, I mean, I haven't necessarily had time to demonstrate it today, but there's a different kind of, I've basically resampled some of the synths that I use on the album, and I'm able to play them using the machine or this. So I'd like to spend some more time going back through and thinking, basically just creating more opportunities that if you want to play around with something, then you know, you've got more stuff that you can hit or whatever, because that stuff does take a long time to program, and even when you programmed it initially, the first gig where you've done it, you might not think to do it because you're busy doing something else. But it's like any instrument, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more you practice, the more you get your head around it, you can then take on other things. So it's good to have extra stuff that you can play with. In terms of equipment, I can't really carry much more weight.
Yeah.
That little percussion pad, and then I think anything else that I would get, I'd have to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, we're sadly right of time, but that was amazing. Cool. Loads of tricks in there. I hope you guys all got something out of that too. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and on Google Plus and all that good stuff. And we'll be back next Friday with another Friday Forum Live. So see you then. Cheers.